I came across this game about 6 years ago. It's, pretty weird. Like, imagine you were just browsing the Steam store and you see this pop up in the search bar. Delirium is a edgy 2D shooter game that for some reason has a respectable level of effort put into it for just being $5. Sometimes you'll find it for significantly lower than that in Steam sales, so there's really not much to complain about for what you pay to get into the game. As you can tell, it was made by bronies that want to insert their pony-OCs into whatever scenarios they probably wouldn't be in, like in this horror setting that makes absolutely no fucking sense. The game was made by the B-52 development team, and from what I understand, it's headed by this Russian guy Igor, or Pepki, depending on your preference. And oh god, dude, if you're in Ukraine right now, good fucking luck. The game was released in 2017 and was consistently receiving updates and improvements until late 2022, at least from what I can tell. Anyway, before you begin the game, your first impressions on the main menu is pretty standard. For a $5 game, I don't have much to comment on, but at bare minimum, I'm appreciating that the game has at least its own soundtrack from the looks of it, and the artwork that was made for it gives it as much of an identity as it could possibly have. I'm still not going to get over the fact they're just using pony OCs for characters for this, but I guess I'll roll with it. When you start the playthrough, you're immediately greeted with two red flags. Number one, even after this game has been out for a while, there is still broken and very awkward English. This is an experimental game. Many features in the game can be confusing when you playing. They even make presents stolen from each other? But not here, please. And number two, the game immediately tells you to read a menu manual because they couldn't introduce important game mechanics to the player in a more organic way. More on that later. As for the broken English, I understand that these guys are Russians that were trying at some level to translate their game into a multitude of languages, but when it comes to localizations, I wouldn't doubt that there's many people out there online that wouldn't mind lending B-52 development team a hand at translating. Much of the dialogue in the game is extremely awkward to read because of the way that it's written, and trying to understand what the fuck is going on in the game's story doesn't make it any better. The awkward dialogue lasts for the whole game, so don't expect it to get any better. So the game starts with you and your buddies showing up to some place that has the character simply referred to as the curator. Wait, hold on. Guys, he's my lecturer, please don't do any weird shit?
That's a swear.
Don't do any weird shit. I don't know how good this is in Russian. The curator, I guess, owns this place or something. I have no fucking clue. He says some shit that makes no sense. Something about a present that I don't give a shit about because it's... I don't fucking know. And your friends aren't exactly engaging characters while you tried to get to know them. I mentioned try as well because they all immediately die after the lights go out and the curator goes missing. Handles again? Oh boy.
Is someone gonna die?
Oh!
Oh!
Wonderful. I cared so much about my friends, I guess. But yeah, your friends die and you just set out to try and find out what happened, I guess. Yeah, that's your introduction to the story. Yeah, not the best start for a game that wanted you to be engaged in its mysterious setting, but I'll roll with it, I guess. The game immediately turns into its horror, gory 2D shooter game that it's advertised as, and the goal of every level is pretty simple. Find keys, open doors, and the level ends. There's some story beats here and there, secret areas to find. Yeah, pretty simple. There's a decent variety of enemies, of soulless ghouls that will either charge at you or fire projectiles at you. As you progress, you'll get different methods of attacking enemies, but certain weapon settings on the bottom left aren't explained to you in a good way. When you get the ability to teleport, you just get it and have to figure out how it works on your own. Okay. No! I just killed myself again, son of a bitch! You could defend this by saying it's good for a game to just not hold your hand at every turn, which is valid, but when it's to the point where you have to pull up how mechanics work on your menu, it can become problematic to some extent. Moving to combat, it's just spam clicking your mouse. That's it. Come on. Oh, fucking... Jesus Christ. Okay. whether it be a knife or the magical attacks that you get later on, it remains the same. So if you have arthritis, I would highly recommend not playing this game. Then there's the whole thing with the game's sanity system. When you've taken enough damage, I presume, your sanity will get low enough to where you get teleported to a personal hell where you have to collect pieces of your psyche and then run to your heart to get back to the level. From what I understand, this cannot be done repeatedly, as you'll eventually die with a creative assortment of game over screens. There's also the maniac mechanic, where if you kill enough enemies, your sanity will just make you a maniac and you do more damage, with this very, very annoying overlay on your screen that you just have to wait to go away, I guess. None of these mechanics are necessarily bad, I just wish the game would do a better job at explaining them to you. Because it's just throwing the player into this situation without knowing how any of this shit works. Like, here's an example of something that I think is good. There are certain areas in the game where you can damage the environment, and the damage to the environment could actually end up killing enemies for you, like destroying pipes and whatnot. Yeah, the environment could also kill you, but if you can use the environment to your advantage and have different methods in attacking enemies, that's cool. I like that. Letting the player figure that out is organic and works. I didn't need the menu manual to figure it out. Look, I know I've been predominantly negative so far, but there is stuff to be found here. The sound design, for one, is pretty good, especially with a lot of the enemies. The aforementioned soundtrack and the artwork is pretty decent. It's not great, but it's certainly better than anything I could do, at least. But honestly, that's as much as I can say, because the whole game can also get pretty tedious. The aforementioned key objectives is every single level. It's just finding certain keys that go to specific doors the whole time for the roughly 2 to 2.5 hours of game time. Considering the game lasting such a short amount of time, it's not that bad, but it definitely drags the quality of the levels down because it's just finding keys. Yeah, there's enemies to fight, but the objective is still the same. And oh boy, then there's the ending. I just really like organ music. Great dialogue. The music that's performed on the organ. What is this dialogue?
Acting? Where's the voice acting? It's
good.
A pity that it doesn't.
I don't know how I got here, but hey, there's an organ here. When you get past the last level and find the curator, I shit you not, the curator becomes a piss-poor Sans knockoff, where he tries to tell you that killing all of the monsters that tried to kill you was bad and reflects very poorly on you because the monsters were actually innocent souls the whole time. Yeah, this is not a joke, this actually happens. You then exit the room and the protagonist summons some more ghouls in the edgiest I'll show them that this game can muster. And yeah, that's Delirium. Yeah, it verbatim copies Undertale in the combat department, where it tries to make you feel bad for killing them, but I don't, because I have no connection with any of the enemies in the game, unlike Undertale, where you do have a connection to those enemies. It's not even comparable. Like, why would you try to do this? It's just fucking dumb. Okay, so given the fact that there is an achievement for getting through the game without killing anything, I'm going to guess that there is a different ending if you don't kill anyone, but I don't have enough motivation to go through the whole game again, and I'm just not interested. Yeah, the game is weird as fuck, but at least it was $5. I should mention, though, that the game also has Steam Workshop support for some reason, so I think the game has potential to be really fun with whatever the community comes up with, depending on how customizable the experience is. As for the base game, though, it's not great by any means or even good, but it's not terrible. There's effort put into this game from people who really wanted to do it, I can tell. But there's nothing here to make you care about any of the characters or the setting or the story. It's just a mindless shooter where you just spam click on enemies to kill them and then you just get to the end. There's effort put into this game from people who really wanted to do it, and that so much is good enough for the $5 or under you paid for it. If this was over $5 and there was no Steam Workshop support either, yeah, this would this would not be very good at all. You know what? I give it a fucking 4.5 out of 10. Why not?